Hello, people! Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew. And tonight, on A Dose of Drew's Friday Night Knives, we have the Civivi Vision FX, a Vision Fix, designed by Snecx. There we are. This one is a knife center exclusive in twill carbon fiber and S35VN. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe I can get it to focus. Right there where it says S35VN on the tab. Anyway, it's really kind of cool. As you may well know, let me make sure I'm looking at that right thing and not just a scratch on there. Anyway, yeah. Let's see. There you go. S35VN. There we go. So yeah, anyway. Really nice. Has this wonderful vision lock with the hole that lets you see the mechanism and the way it works right there, which is nifty all by itself, and lends it to the name of the knife where you have that little vision, the vision hole. Some might call it a glory hole, but don't put anything in there. Anyway. So let's talk about this right now, but first things first, let us get some of the fantastical empirical measurements. This is not a new knife, so you have probably seen several videos of this by now, but that does not mean it is not worth going over again. It is just around 3 5/8 from tip to scale and approximately 8 inches from tip to tail. It is, however, I better make this part because it is quite a bit of difference between the cutting edge, which is only about 3 1/4, and the overall length of the blade. It is a fairly long blade, even though it is not intended to be, as this does have quite a bit right there. All right, weight of this. It is not the lightest knife out there, the tool carbon fibers there, but the solid liners that are not nested leaves some weight out there to go. And boop. 403, little over 1/4 pound, just over 4 ounces. So it is what it is, and you know we will continue to work on that. Let me see if I can deal with the autofocus problem. All right, so now we're going through. There is the wonderful little bit of weight there, just around 4 ounces. We will do a little bit more of the overall stock thickness. 1.015, fairly thin. And boy, oh boy, can I get this teeny tiny bevel. And it is pretty thin behind the edge by the feel of it. Let's see if I can get that right there. 13.5 thousandths behind the edge. Let's see if I can get this in. There we go. 13.5 thousandths right there. Wow. Crazy. Slid off a little bit. Anyway, so yes, it is very thin behind the edge and extraordinarily slicey. I don't know how to work autofocus, so we'll just make do with what we've got. Oh, back to 1. Anyway, so yeah. So now we have this. And of course we must have the standard Spyderco sandwich. So a little over 1.01 inches, a little over 1/10 of an inch in thickness. Look at that size. Look at that hand space. More hand space overall than the Paramilitary 3. Approximately similar to the beak. So very similar hand space to the Paramilitary 2 and edge to the Paramilitary 2, while being somewhat smaller. And of course, the Para 3 lightweight in this case, both of these examples in S35VN. You can see very, very interesting, similar in size, very much to the Para 3 with a much longer blade, similar weight and carry to the Paramilitary 2. Very interesting combination. And the thinness behind the edge of the Civivi, which Civivi is very well known for and has a very well-deserved reputation for attaining, is pretty awesome. And of course, it's just a blur. And this one you can see similar in size, more edge for the size in the blur, but more hand space for the size and the vision. And not just any leak, but a random leak. And there you can see that, again, a lot of hand space for the size on the Civivi. A very simple but elegant handle design too. A lot of people may think that is just not going to be comfortable. It is better than you think. We'll get to that in a moment. And of course, the Benchmade bug out of perennial, as you can see, very similar. The weight advantage definitely goes to the bug out in as many incarnations. That does not mean the Civivi is not fantastic. And of course, Civivi's own Elementum. This one also an S35VN in carbon fiber. Again, similar hand space, bit more blade, some blade angles. We'll touch on that in a minute. All right, and of course, coming up next, the vision compared to my Wiener, it may be longer and it has a bit of a droop at the end, but length is not all it is cracked up to be. Mine is thicker, heftier, and it has all of the right bumps where you need them. And of course, that is what really matters. All right, so the damn nice characteristics, design, aesthetics, mechanics, noteworthy points, intended purpose, cost to value ratio, expectations, and of course, if it wants to be damn nicer, some requests, if there are any. All right, first things first, the design, which is one of, to jump ahead just a little bit, one of the more noteworthy points on this thing, in that it has a very specific and unique lock design that is something Snecx does wonderfully. Very, very good on the design. I believe the custom ones of this lock piece actually can come loose so you can clean it. It is meant to be a cleanable, sort of foldable kitchen knife, which is fantastic. This one, the lock bar is captive and it does not come out, so it is a fully contained piece. Even though it is still easily cleaned and it does come apart as a whole unit, the lock bar itself does not pull apart. So that is something that is definitely different. However, the ergonomics of this design are interesting. First of all, the setback on this is just enough that the saber grip prevents it from being anything a certain. Now, you can kind of, it's designed, you can do it that way to dislodge it, and of course I do it right off camera. So you can dislodge it while it's in there. That doesn't allow you to pull the thumb back from the saber grip, dislodge the knife. Most people will probably find that to be useful, in that you can quite literally grab the clip and work it with one hand that way. So is that bad? No. Yes, you can accidentally do it with your thumb, but accidental is a strong word in that you have to do quite a bit of maneuvering to make that thing move and go way back and then catch it. You have to really try to do it. So it's not really anything that's out there. And the choil part, the angle, kind of the weird angle to the choil is perfect in the pinch grip. Does wonders on the going out, or the sort of scoring grip out on the front. It is fantastic for that. So what seems to be an obvious thing, the kitchen and food prep as a small prep knife, this thing is great. It's very maneuverable. That also brings into some of the other parts of the design with the EDC parts, where just about anything that's going to be a small food prep knife that's really good at it is also going to do great EDC work. Vice versa, this is no exception. Really, really good on the ergonomics. Pinch grip is where it really shines, and the scoring grip. But there's an unusual amount of leeway and capability in the saber grip. And even though I am large width, medium length on the hands, there's enough room for that even extra large hands, there's enough room to just have the pinky off there and still have a thumb, and a very, very nice saber grip that gives you a lot of choke back to get power into that slice and the large sweeping cuts. You don't really want to do a chop, but it could do it in a pinch, and the lock is very, very robust and is definitely robust enough to take a fair amount of abuse if it needs to. All right, as far as the aesthetics, this is an interesting knife. It doesn't quite look, it does pull up very nicely as a closed unit, where it's very tight and keeps itself well within its silhouette. And this pocket clip to the side, which is unusual and gives it a different aesthetic that is both cool and really nice in the hand as well. Also, really, really, really lends itself nice. Number one, it's ambidextrous, but just gives it this wonderful look when it's all closed up. That is pretty good. And open, this thing, that the sort of small Santoku style paring knife kind of style kitchen utility type stuff is very apparent, but it's also very apparent as sort of a worn foot, sheep's foot modified something that is a very well known. I mean, this is another kind of modified sheep's foot style. It's just a really, really good EDC. There's plenty of modified types of this style that make themselves just fantastic EDC knives, right? So there's a lot of, and we can get similarities out all day long. There's plenty of them. It's just well known as a good EDC, and it looks good. So if you're into EDC, you know that's going to be just the blade shape itself, if it's well executed, is going to be a good EDC blade shape, and this is no exception. And it has these weird lines that blend into lines that kind of give it a unique aesthetic that are also very functional and ergonomics, like the choil here. It kind of goes almost the wrong direction in the loop, but manages to pull it off and does it fantastic. And the speed holes, the vision hole, all of it lends itself to a really, really good aesthetic. I'm a fan of twill carbon fiber, even if it is a little bit plain. Some people don't like it. The chatoyance, even in twill for me, still makes it a really nice material. And of course, G10 or micarta is perfectly good as well. This one just happens to be the twill carbon fiber, which is one of my favorites. But man, and the aesthetics to me just really, really scream useful knife. There's a little bit of a finger stop. It's subtle on the looks, but and useful and subtle in the execution in so many ways. And the mechanics of this lock, which does just essentially pull back like so many and have an action to it, but the ability to slowly manipulate the lock from the lock bar in either direction is pretty nice. And it's, I mean, the face it's touching is the round of the blade there, and you can see it's shiny already, kind of smooth. And then it also makes it easy to lubricate. A little bit of oil on the blade and in the bearings, and boom, this thing is ready to rock and roll. And even where the vision hole is right there, that's going to have, you can put oil directly on it right there, and now you have a spot. And not only that, but you can see right here where it is. You can oil it out here. It's all exposed, which really is an interesting bit. And that's on the aesthetics and mechanics part, like the ability to get in here, clean it, utilize it, keep it maintained. I know as part of the designers that I follow him on Instagram and stuff like that, and has stated that was one of his design goals for this knife as he was going through the design iterations. I followed it some time ago, and it was great to watch. And there was a lot of being able to clean it, use it, and keep a knife going. That seemed to be a very much an overwhelming presence in the design philosophy that he went through, the designer Snecx went through in this, which was really fun to watch. And it is nearly, I don't want to say perfect, like there's no perfect action. It's just the execution of this makes it extraordinarily usable. Just You can control the blade so easily with the deployment and gravity that it's just crazy. It's very, very linear. I want to say hydraulic in the sense of that it's linear and not squishy. It just moves when you want it to and does it when you don't. And you can, the deployment goes many ways. And so the mechanics of everything else is great. The clip, pretty good. Standard Civivi pocket clip, twill, whatever. Everything else is good. The mechanics of the lock are very easy to use. It's very similar to a Shark lock or an Atlas lock or a lot of these back spring lever arm locks. It has some differences in the engagement. We'll get to that in a little bit, but that is definitely it. And of course, noteworthy points. Noteworthy points is this lock mechanism. The biggest noteworthy point on this is absolutely the design, the simplicity and robustness of the lock mechanism, and just how this lock mechanism makes this knife work. And it is great. It is fun. That's a big noteworthy point. It's not super cheap. It's not super expensive. You do pay a little bit for the innovation, but that's not a bad thing. Paying someone a little bit of extra money to do something unusual, innovative, and that brings something new to the table is rewarding them for being good and innovative, and that's what it should be. What's wrong with paying someone a little bit more? After they've had time for the design mature and get their design money back, it may go down or not. But if something's new and innovative and it costs a little bit more, pay the people the money. It's not that bad, and this is well worth it. So that's probably easily the most noteworthy point on this is that that lock. Slight point on it is the elegance of the design. By that I mean the way this little round part that would be that's a part of the lock when it's closed turns into an unusually shaped choil and a slight bump that keeps your finger almost like just a little beak that helps lock you in, or provides you a really nice pullback surface when you're using it in a pinch grip or as a choil. Elegance, having a little bit of jimping on the front of that, all around it, gives you just the right purchase for just the right things and times. Having it just far enough back that you can utilize your thumb while being able to use it if you want in another way is almost, that's a little bit harder, is almost ideal. And it still allows you just enough space for a decent saber grip. This isn't going to become a saber chopper or anything, but if this is your preferred grip for a lot of work, you'll be able to use it fairly comfortably with a fair amount of room. If you have really extra large hands, you probably may have to get to this little pinky ramp right here in the saber grip, but you should have no problem in a pinch grip having just enough room for your fingertips and control. And that brings us to the intended purpose. I know this is an EDC knife. The Civivi version is definitely an EDC intended purpose. But as I mentioned before, I remember following the designer of this knife through some of the design iterations on social media. And one of the primary goals is not just EDC, but a kitchen knife, a kitchen and food prep knife you can bring along with you. So there's that was something that I remember from the days of Snecx, the designer right there, mentioning on social media as he was going through design iteration. So I happen to have some insight as to the intended purpose, and it does it well. This is thin blade stock, goes to thin behind the edge. Factory edge Civivi, they do a really good job. They're one of the better ones, easily top 5 in the industry when it comes to their apexing. If you like really smooth grinds, you're going to be looking at something like Reek or Hogue for in there. If you like apexing, you're talking Benchmade, Spyderco, or a couple more that really just get their apexes on point. There are several others too, but like we're literally splitting hairs to find out who's better. So they're in that top tier for sure, and it really just does a good job. This particular the normal ones are in Nitro V. This S35VN is obviously the more upscale version. It would be what I would request if I was looking at the Nitro V version. I can guarantee you right now it would be a more edge retention oriented version of the knife. But we'll get to that in a minute, because the cost to value ratio on the regular one, on a Nitro V version of this knife, you're talking about something that's under $80. That's a pretty decent. It's a pretty decent price for a great knife. There's a lot of competition in that level, so it makes it really hard to differentiate this thing as anything other than a novelty lock, which, while not untrue, does it a disservice for some of the rest of its really, really cool design that doesn't quite get all of the recognition that I think it may want to. But it does present a great value at that level. This particular one, I believe, was in the $130 range at S35VN, which is fairly standard for S35VN and carbon fiber. It doesn't break any ground on the cost to value ratio there. It just provides a good one. And I'm actually going to reward it in the cost to value ratio at about an 85. It doesn't break any new ground on cost to value, but it's not bad. You get a lot of knife for this money. It's right in the ballpark. It might be on the high side of the ballpark. They're not going for the biggest value here on any of these versions, but they don't have to. They have a really good innovation and a lot going on there. So what would I like to see? I honestly, if I were to see anything on here, the expectations on this was that it would be great. I expected Civivi to do well. They did not disappoint. It is as good, if not better, as any Civivi I've ever had. In fact, in some respects, I can tell you it is most definitely better in its execution. This particular version with the really, really clean lines on the blade, the beveling on the top. There's just some minor points on this execution that I think are just a little bit better than other Civivis I've had in the past. And there's this tiny little details from the edges and the beveling that may or may not be part of the design that really went beyond what I would expect from Civivi. Not necessarily we, it's the kind of thing I would expect from we, but not necessarily Civivi, but they deliver. And that actually brings me to the request. There's already a cheaper version of this. This brings up a request that I would have had for the Nitro V version, which is something like S35VN, where you have this thin of a edge, blade stock and whatnot, and it is doing extra work. With that being said, I would love to see something like S90V, M398, something like S90V, or really high edge retention on this to really maximize the EDC aspects of this knife. S35VN leans right into the kitchen knife aspects, just like the Nitro V or 14C28N. Thin behind the edge, really good geometry, tough steel that's corrosion resistant, and is going to do very well as like a kitchen knife a bit. And with that, a kitchen knife in your pocket, and with the thin geometry and all that stuff, it will have a decent edge retention. S35VN is going to give up a little bit of toughness for just a ridiculous amount of edge retention compared to the Nitro V. I would take S90V, where I'm giving up about 50% of the toughness and getting almost 3 times the edge retention in a particular version, or give me a Wii version that's S90V in titanium. Whole titanium. I would even go for semi-integral if you could. But if you had this, if these were mill titanium scales, no liner necessary, right? So give me a Wii version that has mill titanium scales, no liner necessary, and S90V in that. If you absolutely have to maintain the high corrosion resistance stuff, MagnaCut, maybe S35VN in this particular instance is as good as MagnaCut for me. But if you've got to maintain the kitchen part, M390 or something like that, or 20CV, something along those lines, you'll get similar toughness and almost as good edge retention as S90V, but with a lot more corrosion resistance. If it must keep, per the designer, the kitchen, I think, then I can see M390, but S90V is really with a full titanium scale assembly and all that sort of stuff. I would love to see that. It probably won't sell a lot, but if you do it right, where you have the holes as part of the inlays and all sorts of stuff, there's a lot of design things you could do to really make this gorgeous and put a high value. Though you probably have a low unit count, you would get a lot of value from it, and you could do a pretty good price on it. So that would be the only request, is an S90V. But otherwise, this is the request I would make of the Nitro V version. It's hard to say anything. If I would have had the Nitro V in G10, I would have been like, maybe something in S35VN and like a twill carbon fiber to keep the cost low. And you know what? This is what I have. So this is really hard to make a whole lot of a mountain out of any molehills, because this is one of those knives that I would have requested from a current version. And like the one that I'm even saying would be a request similar to the type that has already been put out, I believe, by We as one of the original ones. It was much more, it was different. It was more like the original custom than it would be more like this. So it would be instead building on this instead of the custom. But still, this is a hard knife to really find a lot of fault with. It really does almost everything really great. This is a high, like a decathlon, triathlete, whatever you want to call it. This does it. This is absolutely a package piercer. That tip is acute and robust enough to really get into even some heavy-duty plastic or packages. It is absolutely a shrink wrap slicer. It has tons of choke up and other capabilities to mean you can get a lot of power behind it as well as control. It is a cardboard carver in both the thin geometry, lots of spaces for choking back so you can get the meat of the blade into long cardboard slices. It really does. And of course, it is in multiple grips an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. And that just makes it an EDC beast in any book. While only having an 85 on the value numbers, the rest of it really goes high. The design, it's unique, it's identifiable, and most of all, it's useful. It adds value and use to the knife while making it easy to clean and maintain. That's important. The aesthetics, I think, are great. It is different enough that you can see it's unusual while still letting you know this is the tool you use to cut things. The mechanics are nearly impeccable and very, very linear and easy to control throughout any of the deployment methods or types. And it is so fidget friendly, it's ridiculous. And of course, the noteworthy points, the biggest one being that lock mechanism, which is different and is robust and of course included in it. And it is the only knife with this locking, or any knife that comes from Snecx, the designer. An intended purpose being a EDC knife / folding kitchen knife or a pocket kitchen knife, which it does very well. Its cost to value ratio is where it falls the most flat, and it just kind of runs down the middle of the line. It provides a good value for the cost. It's not killing it at things like the Kizer Nice Guy, where you can find some of these things with Nitro V and stuff for just under $40 without shipping in some ways. So it's not that same kind of value, no, but it still provides a really good value for the money. There's just other ones that are real value leaders. And if you're really into that, you're not looking at an $80 Civivi Vision, or in this case, like $130, $140 Civivi. You may find these on sale, but that was the approximate cost when I bought it. All right. And then, of course, expectations were that this was great, which it did. And any request would be just keep doing this upgrade thing in small batches, where you have like a titanium handle from We, an S90V blade that you can pull out real thin, and make some and change that thing maybe to 17 instead of, make the degrees a little bit different. But just do something on there to really maximize that S90V. Otherwise, there's already a Nitro V, a lower cost version. This S35VN version gets that next level up that really puts a lot of value behind the materials and the design. So there isn't a whole lot to request. So in the overall damn nicer categories, this one gets a 92. It is a really good knife. Its other redeeming characteristics sort of overpower that relatively flat cost to value ratio to give it just a really great value of a knife. And if the innovation and noteworthiness of that lock and the way it just sits calls to you, then this is a great value. This is going to be something you can't get anywhere else, and it's not going to break the bank. And especially for me, where I wanted to get one of the Snecx versions, I wanted to get something special, but I didn't really want the Nitro V. When this came out, this filled that need for me. And if it, not necessarily a plug for Knife Center, but for this particular version and the materials and everything, this is, if you're looking for something like it, this is the version for you, and I highly recommend it. All right, so that's where we're going to leave it. This is, of course, a fantastic little knife. It is recommended as an EDC beast, but in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up. So go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like. Be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew. And you guys have a great rest of your night.